Excited to be here with you guys on this week. It's a big week, and so I am very excited to have some much needed distraction at talking with some of my favorite musical guests. And today I am talking to Sam himself. He has a new EP that he released, I think, back in May called Slow Drugs. It's fantastic. It also was released on vinyl, I think a month ago, and has also just debuted a new single called Cry. But before I let Sam in, I want to remind you all that Tower Records is live at towerrecords.com, and it has over 500,000 titles that is on records, that is tapes and also CDs, and is obviously the only place for you to get your official Tower Records merch. So I see Sam has joined the chat. Hopefully the internet is on our side. Ask questions if you feel like it. We love to hear from you guys. We love to hear what you think of the new music, and yeah, happy that you guys are joining us today. Hello, Sam.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being with me here today. Where do you find yourself quarantining?
Right now, I'm outside, actually, more or less.
Outside my house?
I am not outside your house. I think that'd be terribly creepy, because we just met. But I'm outside the rehearsal space where I've been living these past weeks.
Is that in Brooklyn, or are you in Sweden?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay.
Yeah.
One of those.
It's like the Brooklyn of Scandinavia. No, just kidding.
That's what I hear.
What about you?
I am in Los Angeles with
Nice.
ever spotty internet connection, so hopefully
Same here.
we'll be good today. I understand that you've bounced around a little bit during quarantine. And first I would love to just know, how has your quarantine experience been? Have you picked up any new habits, good or bad? What have you been up to?
The habit question is a big one, so I'll save that for last. I would say my quarantine experience has been pretty eventful and pretty unpredictable. I originally came here to Europe in March for a tour that got canceled, I think, after a single show. And I basically haven't been able to go back to Brooklyn since then, which is where I actually live in theory. So I packed for like 2 weeks and have been here since early March. Same
Wow.
socks,
I
same
mean,
socks
not a bad
throughout.
place to hole up, but that sounds incredibly stressful. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I understand you were on tour when the pandemic hit. Can you
Mm.
tell me, and you mentioned that you had just played only one show, so can you sort of tell me how you came to come to that information, and what you decided to do after, and sort of where you found yourself staying?
You know, it's funny, but that's basically the pitch for my new single, which is that the night that I learned that the tour was canceled, I was driving just for the millionth hour, right? Like at night in Switzerland on the Autobahn. And my partner at the time broke up with me via phone. And on the news, they were saying, it's going to be tricky to get back to the US from Europe. And I was sitting there in my car, freshly out of cigarettes. And I was like, this is a joke.
That
So
insult to injury.
basically, and then my second thought was, it's also a joke for me to pity myself. There's no way, this is a global catastrophe. There's no way this is the worst anyone has been affected by this, you know? So yeah, anyway, I ended up writing a song about that, but that was where I was when the world changed pretty drastically. Yeah.
Wow, that is
Mhm.
amazing. And also, appropriately titled, it is the new single Cry. For those of you who are watching, it's a fantastic song. And I want to go back to a question, because you said you'd save it for the end, and I bombarded you with a bunch of questions. Good habits and bad habits?
I thought I was able to dodge that one.
Never.
So, good habits, definitely no new good habits. Let's put it that way. Bad habits, maybe sort of a little more rampant, a little less like under control, just because it's such a big alibi that you can just re-extend. You know, when you go abroad and you don't really update your data plan, so every time you like get that text that's like, you're gonna run out of internet, you're like, okay, just one more day, right? Like I'm gonna give myself just one more window. I feel like that's been the case for bad habits during COVID. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Absolutely. I've picked up a fair share of them myself, which is why I always ask. Um, and it sounds like you've also been balancing out with some really productive moments. Also, I just want to mention, you said something really interesting to me, which is even having your tour canceled and getting broken up with and being out of cigarettes, plenty of reasons to be upset. Your mind sort of went to a place where you're like, well, I don't have it the worst. And I think that's been such an interesting thing for people to cope with during all of this, because a lot of us aren't immediately strapped or haven't lost people specifically, but it's still a fucking global pandemic. Like, we're all going through trauma. So I am happy to hear that you are at least able to channel it into your art.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and at the same time I am talking to you from Switzerland, the world's gated community, where it's I'm sure a lot of people watching are like, this guy can't be serious. He's complaining. So I think both can be true, right? Like no matter where you are and how bad the trauma is in your individual case, like it may well be a lot worse or better for other folks, but it's still real the way it affects you. So like trying to balance those two has been a bit of a balancing act, as
Yeah,
it
a
were.
thousand percent. Can you enlighten me a little bit on what Switzerland's policies have been with COVID? Like, are you guys pretty much locked down? Have you been able to
Mhm.
play any shows?
Yeah, so we were pretty much locked down at that time, like when I newly arrived, in the spring, and then in like truly Swiss fashion, we were like, oh, I guess this doesn't affect us after all. It's the world's problem. And like we're opened back up more or less in the summer, which was a blessing because we were able to tour, play shows, and like live outdoors, etc. And then now, I guess 2-ish weeks ago, people were like, actually, we may have jumped the gun. And so now we're pretty much in a situation that I'm sure a lot of you in LA, for instance, have been enduring this whole time, which is like masks and no fun. And
It's no
you know,
fun, but we're also in a weird moment where, like, when no one wants to commit to an official lockdown again, so things are kind of open and the rules have gotten all gray. So super fun, great times. Um,
mm,
I'm so happy to hear that you have been able to play a couple shows, because that's certainly not been the case for most of the musicians that I've been interviewing.
mhm.
Was that tour intended to be for Slow Drugs, and that was the Slow Drugs tour, uh, and was that like the first time that you had been playing those songs?
So we've been playing the songs for a minute, also in the US and like other places in Europe and stuff. But the spring tour that never was going to be the first leg of like the Slow Drugs promo tour, and then the fall tour that actually would have gone on through I think even late November that has now been cut short would have been sort of the second leg, and then what we managed to do in the summer was just like feel out what's possible, like playing shows outside. I played a lot in smaller formation with a trio, which has been cool and like kind of changed the arrangements and stuff. So if the pandemic has taught me one thing, is like maybe don't cling to one fixed idea that
Mm.
you have of like this is what my tour is going to be like. These are the dates we're going to play and stuff. Like touch wood, you'll be able to play a show and play it as well as you can and take it from there. You know what I mean?
Wow. What an incredible
Yeah.
thing to learn and carry with you, and that has been something that has brought me so much joy, is seeing how the sort of necessity is the mother of invention, and people have gotten really creative with how to get their music out, doing live streams. I spoke with someone who lives in San Francisco and was just doing concert out her like garage where people can pass and listen, and so any way to get your art out there is so helpful for the fans, and also I believe probably very cathartic for the musicians as well.
For sure.
So with that, I am curious, have you looked into live streams? Have you done any, and do you plan to?
I have looked into them sometimes with like mixed results. I'm not the most like tech savvy person always. Also, I've been pretty much like between places most of the time. So it's like, how's the internet here? How's my data plan doing? Blah blah blah. So it's been there's been ups and downs, but we've played a few really great live streams. And one thing I've been kind of like trying to wrap my head around is assuming this is going to be a reality for performers in the near future at least, right?
Yeah.
Not only how can we start like making money somehow off of it, I think people are thinking about that, but like something I'm really missing comparing to real shows or conventional shows is like how do you get the direct response from the audience, right? Like I see people are sending hearts and thumbs and stuff, and that's lovely, but like if you're in a room with people and you see their facial expression when you play your new song, you're like, ooh, this is a moment of truth, you know?
Yeah, that has been something that it's been echoed so many times by musicians who
Yeah.
have released albums under quarantine. And you actually just gave me an excellent segue to a question that I like to ask all of our artists, which is because you don't get to have that sort of face-to-face experience where you can see how people are taking your music in, is there a sort of ideal circumstance that you can imagine when, let's say, for Slow Drugs or even for this next album that you're working on, that you sort of imagine them taking your music in, whether they're driving or with headphones on or drinking beer, whatever it might be.
Well, I got the beer and the headphones, so I
Okay.
feel like I might be a little biased. I started in my mind, who knows? I started writing Cry in the car, driving at night. But that's a bit of a, you know, like a rock and roll trope. Um, so hopefully it's all kinds of situations. Like if you have some kind of commute and you're like a real adult with like a schedule and you listen to that song and it's meaningful to you, I love that. If you're living out of a suitcase and you know you're crying over FaceTime and that's the song you listen to afterwards, I love that too. I feel like the more the merrier, sort of. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
even want to like plant that into people's heads. I want to like, you know.
Yeah, I respect that. I think especially with a song like Cry, anytime you can listen to a song like that and it affects you and you can turn inwards a little bit, I think is the right way to listen to a song like that. By the way, do we need to rescue you? Are you gonna be okay? Are you gonna be able to come back to America anytime soon?
I'm glad you're asking. That was going to be my next question. It's like, whenever you're ready, just airlift me out of this hellhole. No, thank you very much. So far so good. I'm, you know, again in Switzerland. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I miss the US. I miss my friends. I wish I were there with you guys, especially in the coming days. Tomorrow, we don't have to talk about that, but there's a lot of like thoughts about that.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
like, I wanna be there with the team. But yeah, I'll definitely let you know
I
if
think the
there is
rest of
like,
us want to be in Switzerland right now, this
let's
week
trade.
especially.
I'm down. I got Swiss fatigue. No, I'm just kidding. I love it here. But I really, what I meant by that was I'm really homesick while also feeling at home here. You know, it's a strange, like, dissonance. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that you're working on new music, I mean, I read a little bit about this, but can you walk me through some of the limitations and some ways that you've had to sort of work in this new context? Because I believe I remember reading that Cry was recorded with some of your touring band, and
Mhm.
finding recording studios and finding musicians to play with has got to have presented such interesting challenges.
Absolutely. And opportunities too. Like the day that we cut that song, I was at the studio with actually two players that I've known for quite some time and always like played when I was over here. So they're, you know, they're my buddies and we were tight and stuff, but they'd never played the song before. So we recorded a bunch of other songs. And I was like, okay, now this. And they were just kind of like figuring it out. And I love that because you can hear it. And then I basically, with my producer, Daniel Schlett in Brooklyn, we kind of like finagled it from there. So we took whatever happened in that session and we just worked on it together. And he, you know, turned it into the thing that it is. Yeah.
Incredible. That's a thought that I have very often is if we had a pandemic like this in 2007, it would suck
Mm.
so much worse because
Oh yeah.
we'd just be playing Snake on our Nokias,
Oh,
just
watching
like,
cable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so it is so cool to hear. And that's certainly not the first time I've heard that musicians have been doing their best being able to just send tracks back and forth and having it mixed and produced elsewhere. The power of the internet is going to save us or destroy us, one or
Both.
the other.
I was gonna say it's jury's still out.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been kind of working towards this. I understand that you are planning on releasing an album sometime next year. Is Cry officially the first single off of it?
It is.
Can you
It's
tell me a little bit about why you decided to choose Cry to lead with and how it
mhm.
sort of sets the tone for the album that's going to come out?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, it's the probably the fastest turnaround I've had between like inception, so to speak, and release. I've never I'm a turtle as far as like creative processes go, right? And this time started in that fateful night in March, at least like the idea for it, and recorded it over the summer and then like put it out October 16th. So it's like to me, it was important that it would be close, time-wise, to the time when it was most relevant, maybe, or when I was inspired to write it.
Yeah.
And during that time, actually, I was at least for a while just kind of writing and getting stuff out, and a lot of that turned into the other songs that are going to be on the record. So for me, it's like the flagpole, if that makes sense, from
Hmm.
that kind of dark, desperate, but also really stimulating and like intense time that sort of gave birth to a lot of the songs on the record. Yeah.
Yeah. So are many of the songs on the new album finished? And also, I'm curious, are they sort of somber in the way that Slow is, sort of inwards and contemplative? Can we look for that sort of consistency, or do you have different tones for the sort of theme of the album?
So they're all super depressing. No, that's a that's something I've been thinking about. I believe the songs are mostly finished, right? I have a bunch, and then obviously my first listener, last word, second Beatle, Daniel Schlett over at Strange Weather in Brooklyn. He's gonna have a thing or two to say about that too. So like we're gonna hopefully be able to get together somehow and work on them. But yeah, a lot of them we haven't recorded yet. So in terms of like consistency and sound, your guess is as good as mine. I hope we'll
Great.
find the thread. You know.
Yeah. You said that you're outside of a recording studio now.
Mm.
Did you have a session today?
So this is I should just say yes and move on, but I'm just going to be honest because 2020. I'm outside a rehearsal space that is also my house
Cool.
currently, but I didn't want to do it to you to take you in there and like it would have been a lot. So there's a nice little outdoors area here that I'm hanging.
Great. I love it. And I also love to hear anytime musicians during this quarantine have access to a rehearsal space or a recording studio, and many of them live in them as well. So I think that's
Oh,
great.
really?
Yes, yeah, it's been, and also like such a blessing to have access to that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I really love what you had to say about how you wanted to not sit on Cry for too long because it really captures how you were feeling in these times, and like hopefully there will come a day where we can look back on this and like think, wow, that was so crazy. We're not there yet, but it is. I am so looking forward to, and that's what's been so great for me to hear about the sort of ways this has all affected people's creativity and their process. And you have had more than enough changes happening. So I think that it's going to be really exciting when this comes out, hopefully soon.
Thank
But
you.
I'm curious. So we were talking a little bit about Slow Drugs. Can you compare this upcoming album with Slow Drugs? Is it sort of is it different in any way? I mean, the process sounds like has changed quite a bit, but
Hmm.
yeah, how would you compare the two?
Good question. I'm very close to both of them, obviously, because they're my babies, and especially close to the upcoming album because that's all I'm thinking about all day, right? But right now, I can say that this upcoming record is most likely going to be personal in a way that I haven't maybe been able to access before or
Mm,
haven't had the bravery before, right? Because it solitude gives you a strange kind of confidence because it's like there simply is no one else to validate what you're doing.
yeah.
So you're like, I'm gonna just take my own word for it, you know? I think that has affected the songs. I also, especially in the beginning, didn't have any gear with me except for like the stuff I brought on tour. So
Right.
I literally had a guitar and like an iPhone, and started like making demos that I would be able to play by myself and like murmur into my phone. So I'm sure that has had an effect. It most likely will also be the first record that I will not be able to go into the studio with my trusted New York musicians this time
Mm,
around. So, that's actually, I'm very sad about that, and I hope to God that it will be possible somehow. But, they obviously made a huge difference. And so now it's going to be, for better or worse, it's just a whole lot of Sam. And,
yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if you would have made a project like this had you not been stranded in a different country and without all of the things that you work with. And I think it's so lovely what you said about how solitary you have to just sit with yourself. And so you find ways to talk about yourself and your emotions and your experiences and your art in new ways. That's just a product of um, this year, and also with the added drama of you not being in the country that you're from. So so interesting. I love what you had to say about that.
Thank
um,
you.
I am so excited to talk with you about the music videos that you've been releasing. They're all so good. And
Thank you.
let's start with Like a Friend because it's so gorgeous and it's so cinematic, and it has a really fun, really interesting vibe. So can you just talk me through how Like a Friend happened and what the story is?
Yeah. The video was actually the reason I was driving on that fateful night. I'm not making this shit up. I understand that this sounds like I'm trying to just get the pitch across. I swear to God, I was driving before dawn because we were shooting the final scene where I'm like, for the few of you who haven't seen the video, no, for the millions and billions who haven't seen the video, it's a dawn type of scene. So had to shoot that, had to drive there, the world broke. Anyway, I had been working with the same director for the last three videos. So he did Slow Drugs, Like a Friend, and maybe Allison.
Amazing.
And he's a just kind of like my the eyes to my ears. Like he has such an amazing, weird imagination. Like he knows Swiss geography like nobody's business. He's just like,
Mm.
oh, I know there's a mountain, and then we'll go up there. And I'm like, okay, let me put on roller skates, and then we'll film it, whatever. Like,
Yes, for
which
Slow
is,
Drive. That was also like, come on, so beautiful.
I know,
Ah,
but that's the thing. Do you want to know my trick? My real secret? It's like
yes.
you go to these really pretty places, and then you're kind of not the protagonist anymore. Because if you're in front of the Swiss Alps, like you just kind of have to appear, but the main scene is behind you, and I love that in a way because it took some of the burden.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, back to Like a Friend. Sorry, that was your question. That little mini me in the video that I'm dancing with, that's my little brother. So he dyed his hair blonde for specifically for the occasion, so that we would both be blonde, and he outdanced me. Obviously, that's been an issue between us.
You killed it.
He did kill it. Runs in the family. And we shot that in Zurich mostly. So what we wanted to do was like show sort of the seedy-ish underbelly of a beautiful historic Swiss city after giving all this like splendor of the Alps with the previous video.
Hmm.
Because I don't think a lot of people have that like association with Switzerland, that it can be a very, I would would say active nightlife
Hmm.
scene. You know, a lot of stuff is decriminalized. Like prostitution is legal. So the American in me goes there and is like shocked, like you guys are
Scandalized a
drinking
little bit.
outside, you know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know how a lot of people have started OnlyFans in quarantine, so maybe Americans will go the way of Switzerland as well, and we love to see it. That is really interesting to me, and I wonder if you could maybe compare what the nightlife scene is in Brooklyn and maybe America in general to Switzerland, besides certain things being decriminalized.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that. There is certainly a more like public sphere culture here, right? A lot of stuff, especially in the summer, like happens outdoors. People drink outdoors and hang outdoors and stuff. So that can be really lovely. It can be really like a, you know, place to get inspired or like meet people, whatever. It can also get a little intense, especially like again, certain parts of town. Not trying to like keep coming back to the red light district, but it's that's not a place I frequent, right? That's not like where I hang out. So going there to shoot this video with my little brother at like 7 p.m. There were just all these like crazy looking dudes already hanging out. I was like, oh, well, you know, better like we're not in Kansas anymore. And I think there's in Brooklyn, there's a different like atmosphere in the streets for sure. I feel like New York City streets are obviously my favorite streets on earth, but there's definitely less of a like total anarchy, you know, cops be damned type of intensity, which
A lot
you
of
can
that
get
this
here.
year.
Yeah. So it's very European and it's kind of like familiar and also strange to me
Yeah,
when I come
yeah.
back here, you know?
I love that, and it's so cool that you have formed this relationship with this super talented director because I am such a big believer, and this is such a thing that I've been speaking with lots of musicians. You form relationships, and they can last a lifetime if you nurture them. And it sounds like are so you care so much about your team back in Brooklyn, and so I'm also happy to hear that you have these relationships across the sea as well.
Oh
Now
yeah.
let's talk about maybe Allison because it's my favorite. I
Yes,
loved this music video.
I agree.
Is this your first time in drag?
So yes and no. I have done what I believed was drag in the past. It was definitely my first time in drag at like that professional level. We had two pro drag performers help us out.
Yes.
Shout out
Shout out
to
to Dita Whip and
Dita.
Odette Hellegrand.
Yes, man,
Yeah.
you're good. They transformed me 3 hours every day. And we talked a lot about drag. Like I learned a lot about drag, and I one main thing I guess that I was trying to do with the video is where the song on the surface might sound maybe like a little conventional boy meets girl, pities himself, whatever like love story. I tried to add dimension to that, right? I always love when my favorite videos always do that. They give you something that might not be in the song at first listen. And so what we tried to do was basically very subtly or not so subtly get the point across that it's basically all drag. Like all to all the dudes out there who are very like protective of their dudeness and like feel under attack currently or whatever. It's like it in the end it all is some kind of performance, right? And so I felt like if I make a conventional pop song like that, what if I like try to spin it and be like, but this is still kind of a performance. These roles that we take on, they're lovely as long as they don't hurt other people. And if they become like something that you feel protective and territorial about, think twice. Because like,
Yeah, I love that,
you
and
know,
I really love what you had to say about how uh, adding a visual element to a song can really change it, can really give it new context. And music videos are oftentimes such a labor of love, sometimes thankless, almost all the time pretty financially draining. And I love I really love when artists decide to go that route, because it's not, we don't really have MTV anymore, and so it can, music videos are in kind of a weird gray area, but there's still, it's such an amazing vehicle for art, and I was such a big fan of that one. Would you do drag again? And can you also tell me a little bit about how you came to meet Dita and Odette, and how you came to work with them?
Yes, I would do drag again, but my
Yeah.
standards are pretty high now. So without Dita and Odette, I'll see if I can work something out. I came to meet them through my director. He has been doing work with them in the past, and he assembled a team basically, and we like in the creative, the like inception process, like sitting with them and being like, how are we gonna approach this, right? What are we trying to say? What is this about? What are we representing with this, right? Was extremely instructive and like kind of a master class in performance and gender identity and yeah, kind of like an expansion of consciousness. So they're the shit. I highly recommend them both. Yeah.
Yes, and hats off to you as well for hiring people in the community and learning
Oh
from
yeah.
them. We love to see it, truly. Are you planning on any more music videos coming up? Are you kind of focusing on the album right now, or do you have ideas for the future?
I do. That's kind of the curse if you like find your, you know, your visual like other alien, whatever, you're like, oh shit, I'm starting to see this while you write it. We put out a little lyric video for Cry, the song that I just released. I hope I can do as many music videos as possible. I feel like this year we put out three of them, so I'm gonna try and give people a little break, and then just yeah, do something crazy again as soon as the time allows with my director Stefan
Yes.
Tumi. Yeah.
I would love a whole drag concept album from you as well. Just putting that
Now we're
request
talking.
in.
Now we're talking.
We've got a great question from the audience from Jimmy Sprinkles. What is your favorite music video? And I love that question.
That's a tricky one. Can I be honest?
Yeah, please.
Okay. It might not be the music video that I attach the most artistic value to, but at the time, I can't think of a music video that hit me as hard. So that would be Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana.
A
It's
classic.
just so crazy beautiful. And I was 11 when I first saw it, and I was like, you know, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's a classic for a reason, you know? And it's hard to think of one on the spot, also, just gonna say. Can you tell me a little bit? Because you also released this thing called the Wild Honey Pie Buzz Session.
Mhm.
Great name. And so, can you tell me a little bit about what that organization is,
Mhm.
and how you came to work with them? Is it
Mhm.
a sort of studio and they have featured guests, and is that how it works?
So I think their pre-COVID version is a little different from their like COVID adapted version,
Right.
which they were kind enough to invite me for. What they offer is basically like a very sort of stripped down, intimate live performance, video and audio of a song of your choosing, a recent piece, whatever you'd like. Basically, they give you a ton of freedom, and then they turn it into something beautiful. Like my little mobile phone videos and stuff, they just made into like these pretty little home at home in quarantine with Sam himself videos. Yeah, really lovely, really great outlet, and great format too.
Yeah.
That they're just like do your thing and we'll turn it into something people are gonna want to see and watch. Yeah,
I that
so.
has been one thing with this gig that we started obviously at the beginning of quarantine, is finding all of these smaller outlets that feature, their versions of Tiny Desk Concert, or their
Mhm.
versions of, whatever it might be. There's so much, almost one might say too much out there, but not,
It's an
not
embarrassment of riches. It's awesome. Yeah, there's a ton. It's awesome.
Yes. Before I let you go, Sam, you've been so much fun to chat with. I've
You
really
too.
enjoyed our
Great
conversation.
questions.
I,
You
I
know
want
everything about me. Sorry.
I do my research. I want to shout this out because I think this came out last month. Your the vinyl record of Slow Drugs.
Hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about releasing it on vinyl? How has the reception been? And are there any features that you're excited about?
Yes, first of all, I'm always very excited to have an object to the thing. Because in a way, not to get too esoteric, it's like nighttime and I'm a little drunk. I know it's noon and I'm gonna give you all some time to have breakfast, whatever, but music is kind of like turning something really strange and non-physical into something physical, right? Like you have an idea and all of a sudden you have a song. It's a crazy alchemy thing that happens. And so turning that digital stream, whatever, into like a thing you can touch and like throw like a frisbee, whatever you want to do with it is is like a pet version of that magical process. So that was a big deal to me. I did it with Taxi Gauche, Swiss indie legend. So great, like honor just to work with them. And I think we sold out the first edition, which is killer.
Oh yeah.
And we're gonna reprint and we're gonna donate the proceeds.
Amazing.
Yeah, if as soon as like the PayPal comes in, whatever that is, however it works, he knows how that works. That's also great. Like I don't have to know the thing.
Good to have a
Um,
team.
yeah.
So do you have an idea of an organization you have in mind for donations
Mhm.
or okay.
Absolutely. There's an organization called Campaign Zero,
Mhm.
and what they've been doing is they've been educating people about police violence and police reform, state by state, not just on a federal level, but like tailored specifically to the places in question where police defunding and like police restructuring is most acutely required. And I think they do good work. You should check them out. Joincampaignzero.org, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a cause that is very, very, very dear to my heart. I'm really, really passionate about that. And I think a lot of people are sort of waking up to that with the events in America here and also kind of all around the world. So that's so cool to hear. I did not know that. So some research did escape me. I have one more question for you, Sam, before I let you go. And feel free to get as esoteric as you'd like. I love when people get weird with this. Here at Tower Records, we have a saying that is no music, no life. And I would love to know what that means to you.
Oh, I looked at that and I was like, ooh, this is a pun. No music, no life. There, obviously, it's kind of like no woman, no cry. It doesn't mean, but so without music, there's no living. Fully subscribe to that. Music is oxygen. Like don't want to do the whole thing without it. If you know music, that will be the material you can live your life according to. Like if you're a huge Bob Dylan fan, chances are you'll think of a Bob Dylan line every once in a while when you are, I don't know, being broken up with or in like a mental conundrum, whatever. The other way around, like if life happens to you, chances are you'll either want to listen to music or make music and get to know more music. So yeah, good copy. Really a lot of layers there.
I'll forward that to our marketing team.
Please do.
Sam, thank you so much. Stay
Thank you.
safe in Switzerland. I
You as
wish
well.
you a happy return home whenever that may be. And so excited for this next release, man. Thank you.
So much. See
All
you
right.
soon.
Bye. What an absolute gem of a human being. Guys, go check out Sam himself, listen to the new single Cry, and I'm really looking forward to this next offering because it sounds like it's gonna be one I can cry to, which I love to do. All right, tomorrow I've got a really fun. It's a big day if you're an American, so if you need a little lightness, a little talking about music and things that make us happy, I'm going to be interviewing John Lawhon from Blackstone Cherry. So that is tomorrow at noon.